Welcome. Thank you for being here tonight. My name is Frank. We are, did you like that? We are, glasses on the forehead. None of these guys have that problem. It's just a me thing. We are Capstone Fall 2021 under the supervision of Carol Mormon and Jim Decker. 5 seniors stand before you to present the findings of a project between CST and ARI, Archaeological Research Institute of Lawrenceburg, Indiana. Located in this 6 plus or minus acre parcel of land is located in the lowlands of Lawrenceburg, Indiana. Just a poker chip toss to the east, well 4,000 foot plus or minus from the Hollywood. Our names are Frank Sellinger, Jared Foster, Rakeem Wright, Luke Strotman, and Jordan Emerson Holer. Run the show over here. They're going to tell a little bit more about themselves when we introduce each section of the presentation tonight. I'm the old guy. The other day in dendrology, one of the guys walked up and said, "Hey, old Frank, what kind of tree is that Jim just called out?" And I said, "I don't know, young whippersnapper. Let me go up there and see." I can't get him to call me the older guy. I'm just the old guy. So, but that kind of suits, because the other day I was on the internet and I was looking for something because I like to sing. I like to do a lot of musical things. So I saw this 3 easy steps to composing, and I'm like, I've got to do this. I got to figure this out. So I go through the program, get everything done, and I look back at it, put my glasses where they should be, and because the music wasn't going right. It was 3 easy steps to composting. No wonder it smelled like. Shall we move on? Let's just talk a little bit more about this project. We've been going since January 19th of this year, and there's man hours of at least 5 to 10 hours every week on site or working on it. That we've collected a lot of information. Tonight we don't want to bore you with every little bitty thing, but there's a lot of information we really want to go over. So we'll get started rather quickly. But let me tell you where the site's at. Wow, there we are. Normally when I get a job in, I'll go to Google Earth if I'm on the phone, and I'll ask them for an address or something like that. And then we'll kind of zoom from Google Earth into your city, which we'll find Lawrenceburg here. And then we'll zoom a little bit more into the site. And if you can see this little excellent 4-wheeling territory. Don't scratch that from the tape. This little area here, this lighter area, this is mostly croplands, but this lighter area with this high tension tower on it is the 6 acres plus or minus that ARI has been preserving for future archaeologists and people with interest in discovering what's happened in the past, which is one of the similarities to surveyors and archaeologists. So I've never done a project like this. I'll tell you more about myself when I get to my portion of the presentation, but I've never been a part of a project like this, and it's been very interesting from the get-go. So thank you guys for letting us do this. Before we get started though, let's talk a little bit about what surveying is, and for that, Jared Foster.
So we'd like to thank you guys for being here again tonight. I'm Jared. I'm from Sharonville, Ohio. I've got 3 years of experience working in the survey crew at Thomas Graham Associates, which is located in Finneytown, Ohio. I'd like to start off by talking about land surveying. Land surveying is the profession of determining the 3-dimensional positions of points and the distances and angles between them. We use this to locate, describe, and map the information found on a parcel of land. So over here we have some land surveying equipment, and all of which was used at one point during our project. So right here we got a total station, and we like to start off by setting the total station on a known point on the ground. And once we do that, we'll step on the legs a little bit to get a nice level base. And after this, we'll usually level the legs up, and these have like a little level bubble, like a level gauge, so we can tell how level we are. Then you'll get into these dials here on the side for a little more precise leveling. And all while you're doing this, you want to make sure that you're still located center on that point on the ground. And once it's centered and you're also level, then you're good to go, you're all set up. And you'll go ahead and take this reflector and you'll go and get a backside. So what you'll do there is you'll basically set this up level on another known point that's got like a known X, Y coordinate and elevation. And so basically what we're doing there is to kind of position ourselves and align ourselves so we know we're on the, so we get like the right shots every time the total station's on a known point. And so basically what the reflector does itself is it catches a light, or like a laser that's shot through the total station, and then it reflects it back. And then the total station basically does like a calculation that gets the coordinates of that new point. And so another thing we have is the RTK base, which is right here. And this is, it stands for real-time kinematics, and it basically does the same thing as the total station, where it's going to give you that X, Y elevation point, but it's doing it through a satellite base, so it's positioning itself through the satellites. And then, oh, and it's also pretty useful because if you want to get like shots that are like farther away from our site, it's more portable, so we don't have to set up like 100 times with this to get a shot. So if, like, for example, the towers on our site, we wanted to get like the direction of the transmission line. So I think Frank had to walk a couple miles that day, all just to get those couple shots. And last thing we have is the level. And we basically set it up the same way as the total station when we get it level. And we use the Philadelphia rod back there to basically get a sight, and then we're able to tell like the elevation. Oh, and what we do with this is we tie into a benchmark. So we and a benchmark is like a known point with like a known elevation, and we run off of that, and we're able to get elevations of a bunch of different setups. And we also check the elevation of the benchmark to make sure that's good. So all 5 of us in the group are members, which means that we're on our way to becoming graduates. And after we graduate, we'll all be pursuing our surveying license by taking the Fundamentals of Surveying exam. And with 4 additional years of experience and working under a professional licensed surveyor, we'll be eligible to take and hopefully pass the professional surveyor's exam. And professionally licensed surveyors are widely respected for liability reasons in our field. They're also the only ones allowed to conduct a boundary survey. So this is why having a license is really important to us in the field. But before we can graduate or get our license, we have to prove ourselves and show what we learned by completing a land survey, or by completing a survey. And we were lucky enough to get the opportunity to do our survey on prehistoric land owned by ARI. And we were tasked with doing a retracement survey and a boundary survey, along with creating a topo drawing, a design sheet, and a record plat. And we really appreciate the opportunity that was given for us to grow as surveyors. So we'd like to show you on everything that we did and everything that we found throughout the project.
Thanks,
Turn it
Jared.
over to Frank. Through that record plat.
I'm going to talk a little bit about the record plat that we put together. That said, this piece of property, when we started, we sat down with Liz and Marcus and the team, and they told us, they said, this is what we'd like. And they gave us a grocery list of things that they'd like for us to do. And I think we came pretty close. We've put in a lot of work to it, and like I said originally, it's not a project that I've been a part of before, and I've got a little bit. I'm a little longer in the tooth than a few of the other guys up here. My first license was in Kentucky in 1995, and I currently hold 7 different states licensed surveyor. And Ohio has asked me to get my degree in surveying since my original degree was in teaching. So that's why I came back, and that's why I'm standing in front of you wonderful people. Not you. I was talking about everybody else. Just kidding. He's most wonderful. He's wonderful. I enjoy barbershop singing. I'm a lead in a quartet. You guys?
I have no idea.
You had no idea? It's true. I compete with them. I've competed and won 5th place in district, and I won a gold medal in the national competition with 120 guys singing barbershop in 2016. So, international barbershopper here. Told you I love that music stuff. But that's pretty much me. What's that? Oh, come on, come on. Composting, yes. Composting. I just missed a T. I mean, but I say that really the talent has skipped my generation. My dad was a 2-time Gator Bowl winner at Georgia Tech, Rambling Wreck. And my mother was in Goldfinger with James Bond. She was one of Pussy Gallore's pilots. So I don't have any talent compared to that. I know, it's like, yeah. Everybody's like, oh, now we understand Frank. All the jagged pieces are coming together. Yeah. Trying a little too hard, aren't you, Frank? Anyway, that's me. I always start with that.
7 states, that's pretty good.
Okay, we'll go with that. I always go with my mom was in Goldfinger, my dad was at Georgia Tech, 2-time Gator Bowl winner, and I make incredible armpit noises. Watch this. Anyway. Sorry. Hey, listen, we only have 3.5 hours recording power, so I'm going to go ahead and skip on. Your time is valuable. Let's go ahead and move on. The record plat. First of all, I showed you how we started with the Google Earth. That was Google Earth. Everybody knows Google. Not everybody knows Google Earth. All of us, probably the surveyors in the room, live and die by just getting us acquainted with what the area is like. But from that, I mean, you can't survey from Google Earth, but you can start and initiate your projects really well. Another system, which Rakeem is going to be talking a little bit more about later, here in Lawrenceburg, is Beacon. Beacon is a GIS, Geographical Information System, program here in Lawrenceburg, and it's really good. I mean, there's not a lot of systems like that in Kentucky. We have 127 different counties, and we probably have maybe 30 of them that have a GIS system in there. So, I mean, and I'm going probably from some old numbers, so don't even quote me. But not as many, and Lawrenceburg is really doing a great job. Of course, the creme de la creme is next door, but we won't talk about them. We're in Indiana, so we won't talk about those guys. But when we start, first thing we want to do is we want to get some research done. So we'll go to the courthouse, which is not far from here, and we'll start pulling tax maps. We'll pull deeds, we'll pull plats, we'll go to the surveys office, we'll say, hey, where's our section corners out here, what can we find as far as that information goes? Go to the engineering office, say what our roads look like. Is there a road in this area? Some of the older areas, they don't even have a right-of-way on the road. Find out what we have to deal with. In this case, we had a high transmission tower that we had to deal with, finding the provenance for that, and then we had the CSX Railroad that went through there. So we had some larger type, now it's Duke Energy, I think, is a transmission tower, but it started out somewhere different when we found it in 1927 in the deeds. So I told the guys, I said, always have this with you, because you'll start getting that cotton mouth when you talk. And I forgot my own rules here, excuse me. That's a lie. I actually said that your mouth starts feeling like you've been sucking on dirty socks. So, that's what I actually said. Carol's like, no, I've never had that happen. So we'll get the research information together, and basically our first step is getting the abstract together. By a show of hands, what an abstract is, I don't want to bore anybody. Everybody knows? Let's do this as easier, I'm sorry. Who doesn't understand the term abstract when we talk about surveying?
I don't.
Okay, that's why I'm here.
Everyone else has to learn.
No, that's exactly why we're here. We wanted to tell you a little bit about it. Basically, once we get all the plats, all the deeds, all the information that we have from the courthouse, we'll start piecing all that together. We'll put it on AutoCAD. We'll find tax maps and we'll insert. It's so easy to raster image an aerial, to put it into AutoCAD and start putting your deeds on top of it, finding things that you couldn't find out without walking the entire area. And one of the things about the abstract that we really focus on, in Indiana especially, is the adjoiners. Now that's not an actual word, but it is the surveyors. the joiners are the guys that touch us. Like, see this line right here? This is our property, but this line right here is shared. It's a common line. So we want to make sure that this guy has his property, that guy, you know, or what's in the deed, and at this point we're just putting together all the information from the abstract and piecing these things together. As you can see, Mr. Sedler, Michael J. Has anybody ever met that guy? Nobody? Nobody? Okay. Got that deed and then the year for that, and then it goes back to where it came from, and we went back to 1892 when it was Watts. And we pull those deeds. Now, why would we pull those deeds? Well, we want to make sure those properties have the same description. If we go out there and it's got something different, and there's that, we're trying to figure that out. We're trying to pick up on those things, so later on down the road, we don't step in it, if you will. So, we did that with Oxbow of Indiana, and that's when we found out back in 1927 that Oxbow of Indiana is also, there's another one, it's Oxbow Inc. We found Oxbow had a few different names, and we traced those back, and then Donald Bernard here on the east side of the site. And then this entire area right through here is that CSX Railroad. Anything glaring that's sticking out that's not there? The tower? We put that in there just so you could get a reference point, because that is the only thing on this property that you can see. When you drive up to it, it's that tower. There's power poles and trees and things like that, but the really large structure is that tower. There's no road. There's no road. So that was one of the things that we had to find out. We went to the engineering office. We found out there is a gravel drive that comes through here that has been used forever, and that all the owners of that area know of its existence. And, you know, so when we go to do our record plat, we're going to put it on there and show them where that gravel road is. Are we going to call it a public road? We can't call it anything. It's a farm road. You know, the description of it is, you know, as varied as the people that use it. You know, a four-wheeling road, farm road, you know, but that's one of those things that was missing when we first started on the project. We were looking at it, and, you know, we're not here to fix all the problems. We're here to gather the information and to show everybody where those property lines are and to retrace the original surveyor's property lines. Now, the great thing about this that we did find out is that this closes. How many knows that surveyors are pseudo-psychiatrists? We love closure, right? When we start here and we go this way, this way, this way, this way, we want it to come back to that point and close mathematically. Is that the first time we've said the word math tonight? Wow, that took a long time before we got to math, which is basically about everything that we do. But that closure is so important to us. This deed, when we put it in, it closed within 0.003 hundredths. So that's really good. And it called for monuments that we found 3 of the 4, which the guys will be talking about that later. So as far as the boundary survey goes, when we walked out there, we were feeling pretty good, but we still went through the motions of the abstract. Yes, sir.
When was the track created, and why do you think they created it?
I can answer the first one, but the second one, I don't know. These 2 tracks here are related in their provenance, in their history. This was a 4-acre tract and a 10-acre tract, which made 14 acres originally, and then they came along and they readjusted this line, and so they turned this into a 8-acre tract and a 6-acre tract, which is again 14 acres. But the reason that they did that, I have no idea. I don't know if we've mentioned it or not, but one of the things we do is, I know we haven't mentioned it or not, is check the flood area. And that's part of the initial onset of the survey. And we'll go to the FEMA flood maps and say, what are we in? And we're not in a flood zone here, guys. We're in a floodway. It's different than a flood zone. If your house is creeped up on by a creek that overflows and it's uncomfortable and you might have to get a little insurance on your house, that's probably a flood zone. This isn't a floodway. It's straight, base flood elevation. It's really, I mean, you can't do anything with a floodway, you know, without a lot of going through. But just like Liz's team and Marcus They told us originally these guys were smart. The reason we're here, the Archaeological Research Center, they brought us in because these guys out there knew what was happening. We went back to this property halfway through the survey and it was flooded. And the only piece of property out of the flood was right here. And you'll see why as we get further of why that was one of the reasons. So I mean, these guys 1,000 years ago, I think, is that right? You know, they knew what was happening around here, even though the water levels were probably different. The Great Miami River was actually connected right through here to the Ohio River. And now the railroad is through there and cuts that off. Did I answer your question? Okay. Half of it at least, right? I have no idea why. I have no idea why. That's one of the things that the descriptions in the deeds are lacking sometimes, is the purpose of it. You know, with an easement, you live and die by the purpose and intent, correct? If they create an easement, why is that easement there? What's it for? Da, 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 da. It's a track transferring from one person to the next. This is from Bob to Judith. And here's the property. Sometimes they don't say why. You get into a will, you get into probate, you get into things like that, you start getting into some of the whys, but in this case, we don't know. I'll look into that though. Probably on the final. Let's go to the record plat now. After we do this, we'll go out to the field and we'll look for the property corners. And like I said, and this is positioned by our genius computer dude. This is the northwest corner of the property, the northeast corner of the property, southwest corner of the property, southeast corner of the property. So you can see the monuments that we found. This is a concrete monument that's that you ride over in the road. There's a concrete monument with a rebar stuck out of this. This is the only one that wasn't original to the deed description. This is a 1-inch iron rod, 1.5 feet under the ground. And that's the other concrete monument for the northwest corner. These two are called for in the deed as well as that one. This one is about 1.5 feet over here. They called for a railroad spike. So when we did the record plat, we upgraded the description with the bearings and what monument we found and how far it was from the corner. And speaking of record plat, cross your fingers, that's the next slide. There it is. Look at that. Record plat has many things on it. A lot of things are necessary for the county, signatures, things like that for the recorder's office, stuff that's required by Section 12 of Indiana for our surveyors to sign, signatures, addresses, surveys, surveyor. We've got the property owner, what section, township, range it's in, who did the work, and then my favorite, here's a description. My favorite part of Indiana surveying, it's not in Kentucky, it's not in Ohio, it's not in Texas, not in Alabama, not in Mississippi. It's this surveyor's report. You'll find surveyors' notes on all your other states. Surveyors put in there what they think is necessary to represent what's on the plat. But you won't find a surveyor's report that is this detailed in any state that I've found or been licensed in, other than Indiana. In accordance with Rule 12, tells us what we're supposed to do. Classifies the survey. This is definitely a rural, suburban, and urban. And this, as you've seen, is definitely a rural site. We picked a quad map because all the other maps would have just been blank because there's no real streets or access to it. So we picked a quad map to go on here so you can see some of the centerline stations of the Ohio River, and you can just see a little bit of Lawrenceburg over here where the site is. You can see the transmission tower coming through on the quad map there. And if you scoot a little bit to the left, there, Mr. Computer Guy, sorry, right, you can see the county lines. So to send you the map, you've got the contract requirements. Got the survey, a little down for me. Survey was not completed with the benefit of a title commitment. That means we didn't go to an attorney and say, hey, give us a title commitment. We ran our own search for the abstract and that information. The reference monuments that we found in the field. There's actually a plat in 1980 done on this particular property. That surveyor would have known why they divided it, and he is no longer working. and his plats were taken over by a company we contacted, and they did not have a copy of that survey. So, it's been nice to have. Bill easements are right-of-ways dedicated for the access road. We already talked about that. The direction of the north is based on the GPS RTK observation January 20th. It's 1 degree, 3 minutes, 16 seconds rotated from the original deed that was transferred to Michael J. Sedler and instrument number. All corners of the monuments prior to the survey were monumented with caps, but we didn't have any that we needed to, but that's just a standard in the surveyor's report. Plat was created by a retracement survey. There's different kinds of surveys. This is a retracement survey. We're not creating a new lot. So this is common for just a normal boundary survey. Found monuments in the area with known origin was used to establish the boundaries of the tract. Occupation lines were in agreement with record class and monumentation found. It's really simple when it comes down to the boundary part of this project. But the guys thought simple was good, and I'd be the one to explain it. So, any questions before we move on?
I do have one.
Yes, sir.
Is this tied to the, you were talking about the section corners earlier on, is this related to?
The
section
actual
subdivision?
deed that goes all the way back says what section it's in, but does not tie to a section corner.
Okay.
So,
It's like Kentucky surveying.
it's like Kentucky surveyed in a way, other than the fact that there is a section corner out there that we looked for and it was not there. So all we could have done was to put bearing and distance to that section corner and gone. We think there's a section corner, it's supposed to be around here somewhere, but instead of cause confusion, we just went ahead and duplicated what the original surveyor did.
And does that plat, apparently not in Indiana, it doesn't get recorded automatically anywhere? You don't have a repository?
No, you have a window that you have to, if you choose to record it, it's not a must in Indiana. But you do have 3 months to record it. Wait, am I getting my states mixed up?
Yeah, it does have to be recorded. It'll be 3 years that it has to be recorded within.
3 years.
And there's a note on the plat that says that.
Oh, and the guy in 1980 did not. Maybe the rule was.
It was supposed to be filed. They
Oh.
checked the courthouse. They checked everything they could have checked. And it's just missing.
Yeah, it's called for.
Likely filed in the wrong drawer, and one day it'll be found in the wrong place.
Yeah.
They'll file this one next to it, then they'll find it.
Right?
Well, actually, I was gonna say, I can actually answer that, because some of the documents that were recorded got destroyed, either in a fire and or flood. And so there's a certain date before which any documents do not exist. And it's past that. What they did is they asked homeowners, property owners, after the flood to please bring in your original deeds. And they then started basically from scratch and worked forward. And we still find some issues with that. But carry on.
Very interesting.
Excellent. There are other notes, current zoning. This plat will be void if it's not recorded within north as GPS observation. This will go through a thorough brushing with the supervisor of our project and make sure I didn't do any typos or anything like that. So if there's anything you see on there, it will be fixed. So, but that's the record plat. And right now, I'd like to turn it over to a gentleman who's going to just talk a little bit more about the field work that was completed. Mr. Always Correct, Rakeem Wright.
Anybody still awake? My name is Rakeem Wright. I'm a crew chief with Abercrombie Associates. I've been there about 3 years. I'm originally from North Dakota, but I live in Price Hill now. I've been here about 3.5 years. I was kind of in charge, with the help of my crew, of doing the topographic survey and the control survey that I'll talk about a little bit later. So with the topo, we kind of jumped right into it. We just dropped 2 points in the ground, and we used mainly the total station. I don't know if Jared mentioned it, but the GPS, it's awesome, but it does not work in the woods, and there was a little bit of wooded area we had to get to. And I mean, this thing, you have to have a line of sight, so it's kind of like there's cons to each of them. But I really prefer that total station. It's line of sight, and this side is like completely flat. There's like a foot of elevation change in it. But when you have line of sight and it's open, total station is usually my preference. So that's what we did. We ran 2 crews. I brought some of my equipment from my company, and the school had one as well. Pretty much the same equipment. So we had 2 crews running, one kind of going in the woods and one in the open. I was the idiot who brought the wrong prism, so I had to have Luke hold the data collector, and I had to keep it turned, because normally we use a 360 prism here. And this thing will follow me around too. That's a nice thing about these new instruments, that they're robotic, so they'll follow you around. And these newer prisms, you can have it spin either way. I'll even topo backwards sometimes. But the other prism that I had with me, you have to be facing it all the time. So I was basically just trying to have this thing in front of me the whole time, and I had Luke help me out. And that was a nice thing about having a little bit bigger crew. Normally survey crews, 2 people now, maybe even 1 person. I was working by myself today actually, but 2 people is about normal. But we got the field work done pretty efficiently. So if you want to run to that type of drawing. So this is the topo drawing. You want to open that PWG too?
Okay.
If it'll download.
Yeah.
How many points roughly did you collect?
I want to say about 1,000, which, I mean, it's, for a 6-acre site, that's not a ton, because, I mean, normally you'd have a bunch more if there was stuff on it, like concrete and building corners and all that, but normally it's just a shot. And when we do a topographic survey, something like this, really, really flat, really, really open, we try to get a 30-foot grid, 30-foot square grid of shots. There was a couple features. There was a mound kind of up by that tower. You can almost see it. It's the big 1-foot hump there. You can almost see it there. So we took a few more shots in there just to kind of generate a little bit of that hump in there, but it was pretty tough to get it with the instrument there. Well, what we showed you is our plat. That's our finished thing. We work in something called Civil 3D, AutoCAD. Some of you guys might work in that. That's what we do. So we work, it's called a model space, and we can mess with our points, kind of turn stuff around and rotate. And that's what we actually did the topo. So I just get out there, and I'll just assume I'm at 5,000 X and Y in a certain elevation. And then Frank brought his GPS out, and we'll tie into county monuments, which I'll get into Beacon a little bit later too. But we'll tie into these county monuments, and then we'll tie it down to state plane coordinates, and then I'll bring all my 1,000 points and I'll swing it to those state plane coordinates, so then we're all working on the same system. And if you were to go out with the GPS right now, you could be right on that same system, which is really nice. But for topo, if you're just out there without a GPS, it can just be local. I mean, it's not a huge deal to do it either way. So this is AutoCAD, Civil 3D. We had some issues because some of us on our computers were working in 2017 version, and the school had 2021 version, and you can't save back to the older version, so there were some issues there. But we did work through it. I think it turned out pretty good. So this is kind of our finished drawing. This looks like, I guess it is layout mode, it just looks different. That's the thing too, is you get in here, it's like all your settings are different. His settings are different than my setting. And he uses this weird trackball that I can't figure out. But here's our topographic drawing. This is platted, it will be, that's what you saw in the black and white too. But here are your contour lines. We did 1-foot contours, 5-foot major, 1-foot minor. Normally, like in Ohio or somewhere where you got a lot of hills, it'll be a 2 and 10-foot contour interval. So you'll see a line. Every 1 foot of elevation change, you're going to see a line. Like this is 471, this is probably 472, 473, and that mound is way up there at 475. So this is probably like 600 feet, and you're changing like 5-ish feet. So I mean that's like 1% grade, less than 1% grade. So really, really flat site, but you can see that We got a lot of shots in that mound, and you can kind of see it. I mean, we could have done half-foot contour intervals, but that would have got messy. This is actually the old, it's Miami River, Great Miami River. That's the old riverbed here. And we actually, this is our property line here. And we actually got all the way down to that old bed because sometimes in the older deeds, they'll mention like this goes out to a tree or it goes out to the old riverbed. And so we got that. I don't think we ended up using it, but it was nice to have that in there just in case there was a deed that says this line is on this riverbed. And we'd have that information. But you can see we got that tower in there, and thanks to Frank, we got the shots to the other towers. How far was that, like 2,000 feet?
Did you walk that?
About half a mile.
Yeah, so he got some good walking in that day.
Well, I mean, it was walk and then drag Frank, walk and then drag Frank.
I'm surprised is that not Crystal's,
What's that?
the gun?
I use the RTK, the guys use the gun.
This is,
Prison lists over 2,000 feet, is that a thing?
Some do, some
Some of the new ones do?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, yeah, no, we're just walking.
Oh.
Yeah,
Shot.
we didn't tell Frank that, we just wanted him to walk.
So you had that, great.
Yeah. But back to the topo, yeah, the tower is really the only thing on this. I mean, you see all these huts here, those aren't visible when you go on the site, neither is this wall here. That was actually, Marcus had a magnetic survey done of this site, and he gave us this 8.5 by 11 sheet of all these huts numbered and marked on there. And then they actually went out, him and his crew went out and marked them with flags. They marked this wall too, and then we went and located these. And they're actually really close to what he had on his drawing. But some of these are on the settler property, some of them aren't. And I think ARI is working together with Oxbow to try and save that for archaeological purposes. There's an old foundation in here that we actually had to scale from an old railroad drawing. I think that was an old farmstead that was there. A lot of the stuff you see on the drawing, it's not visible. I mean, we've got our power lines, power tower. That's the only thing you see when you go out on the site. And then this orange line here, it might be hard to see in the back, but this orange line, it was actually an old protective wall from the ancient Indian site. And so here's kind of the entrance here, and it would have wrapped pretty much all the way around. It depends where that riverbed would have sat for it to wrap all the way around, but that's what we located there. And you see we got tree line here. That probably couldn't have been done with GPS, but we could have probably done the whole rest of this site with GPS. But like I said, I kind of prefer that robot. It's kind of easier. Some people say it's more accurate. I think it's more accurate, but that's just my opinion. So that's how we did pretty much his whole site, and then just those power towers or with GPS. So it's really nice when you have both sets of equipment available, because you can kind of intertwine them with jobs, and pretty much every job I do now I'm using GPS and a total station, at least for elevation, GPS wise. You can see, should have flipped my contour lines, there's that road in there. And all these different colors, these colors kind of look goofy on the drawing here, but as surveyors, that kind of helps us differentiate stuff. Like these green lines are railroad tracks. There's a little access drive over the tracks there, and then we've got that gravel farm road here. And those colors just kind of help us pick stuff out, and we've got our tree line in there. What do I got written over there? Some chicken scratch stuff. Okay, just pull it over a little bit there. So, normally, a topographic drawing, it normally just goes with the client. It's not really going to get recorded. And so it doesn't have to be as pretty as Frank's, but we want to make it look as pretty as we can just for the client, as clear as possible, so you're not questioning anything. So I've got my line table there, kind of explaining what all these goofy lines are and what they're doing. And And then I've just got some notes in here. This drawing, it represents all man-made structures, utilities, contours, access roads, anything that you want to see in a typical drawing. Indiana State Plane coordinate system, we'll pull up that beacon too. That was our coordinate system that we used, was Indiana. And for our elevation, I didn't run the level loop. I mean, these guys do it because it was really far. But they ran a level loop, like 2,900 foot one way.
One way.
Yeah, one way, and then they ran it all the way back to check themselves.
Twice.
Yeah, two different crews. One went down the gravel road, one went down the railroad tracks. And they ran a level loop to get us elevation. And you can get elevation with GPS. You typically want to tie into something like we did, a published benchmark, because that's NGS, National Geodetic Survey. They kind of create and maintain all these benchmarks, and surveyors will tie into those, and then they're all on the same system, and there's not a question of, oh, what did you use on this one? Well, I just tied into NGS's benchmark, and that's published, so no one's really going to question that. And so this is Beacon. It's kind of like Google Earth, but cooler. So that's the great state of Indiana. And our site is kind of right in here. I want to zoom in there. And so what Beacon does, it allows you to kind of see the property lines on an aerial. And if you notice this aerial, everything's looking straight down. So when you're riding in an airplane, if you look at a real tall building, you can see the side of it. But these are all, well, you can kind of see the shadows of these a little bit. But that tower is looking straight down. And so what they had to do was they take a bunch of pictures, probably with a drone, I'm assuming, and they'll stitch those together, and then you don't have any tilt or anything to your drawing. And that's really nice for a surveyor, because when we do a plat, we're looking at it straight down, and what this does is it allows us to look straight down on stuff. And so it's really helpful. When I go out in the field to a new job, I'll always curse out whoever did the research on it if there's no aerial. But it really just helps you get a feel for where these corners should be. I mean, Beacon, it can be off 5 or 10 feet, but with a magnetic locator, that's usually close enough to at least get a start for looking for your property corners. And so that's what we did. We kind of looked at Beacon and kind of saw where this line should be. I think it's actually shifted a little bit closer to that power tower, if I remember right. But this is kind of what we look at to start. We see there's probably a corner somewhere in here. This is all farm field. Normally you'll see like buildings and stuff where you can be like, oh, it's like 30 foot off this building, but this is just like a big side of nothing. Well, not nothing, but nothing to tie into. But if you want to zoom out a little bit. So you can do a lot of cool stuff in Beacon. You can measure pretty much any unit you would want to do. You can save this and print it out, so if you wanted to bring that in the field. But obviously our site is just blue highlighted. And so these guys ran a level loop from, there's a, what do you call it, a floodgate?
Yeah.
A floodgate right down here in front of Hollywood. Then there's a disc with a benchmark on it. And these guys ran the level loop from our site all the way down at 2,900 foot using that level there. And to get really good results, you only want to spread out your legs on the level loop about 50 meters. And so these guys, they looked through the level, took a measurement, turned 50 meters, set another point, and did that 14 times there and 14 times back. And they got really good results. I think what you guys closed to about 200.
Yeah, and then we averaged them out, and our was 0.005.
Yeah, so that's
Crazy.
like a 1/32 of an inch just to get it into.
So I got a question on that. So did that match your GPS elevations and how?
2400s.
Yeah, it was pretty close.
24?
Yeah.
2400s.
That's pretty good.
Did you do any kind of adjustment for that, or?
We didn't use the GPS.
No, we didn't use GPS.
We used the GPS for rotation and
Yeah, we
benchmark.
used it X and Y, and then we used these guys' measurements.
So you just basically use GPS to establish grid north?
Right, to get on state plane, because they tied into, I think you guys hit 3 or 4 benchmarks around here, all maintained by NGS, and then they hit those benchmarks, and we kind of just zoomed into the site, and then we got X and Y on our traverse, and then we ran that elevation to the benchmark and back to establish that.
Is Beacon, is that a statewide asset, or is that Dearborn County?
No, it's statewide.
Statewide?
It's run by Schneider.
It's actually Dearborn County. The counties have different systems because there's basically 3 different systems that that different counties have chosen to use, and it's based on the county's preference.
Okay.
All of Dearborn County is on Beacon, and Ohio County and Franklin County are on, now I'm drawing a blank, but they are on different systems.
Okay.
Hamilton County used to have by far the best cages. They call it cages, but it's basically the same thing. They had the best cages out of anyone I've used, and then they switched it, and it's like 10 times worse.
Yeah.
It's probably money reasons, but it's just a surveyor complaining. I guess we can go to that control drawing. So there's our benchmark that we tied into. It's just normally a disc set in concrete, and that's really stable. That'd probably be an A grade. They normally will grade the benchmarks A, B, C, D. I think I want to say it's A, B, C, D. That's A. That'll have really good stability, just because it's in concrete, really big set of concrete, and it'll just kind of depend how long it's been there and what it's set in, where it's at, how good the accuracy is going to be, and they check them periodically too. Via GPS or leveling. So here's my control drawing, our control drawing. So when we got out here, or when we talked to ARI, and we got our proposal together, Marcus wanted coordinates so we could go stake out stuff. He wanted to know, we put state plane on there, US survey foot, just for our reference, and then he requested meters, which wasn't a huge deal. We deal in numbers every day anyway, so that was just a simple calculation. But what we did is ARI, let's zoom in a little bit. ARI had some control out there. They had some nails around this tower, and so we made sure we hit those real well. They had some in this tree line as well. We gave them the boundary corners. And so what that allows Marcus to do is say if he wants to do a dig anywhere on this site, he's going to have control pretty much right in his back pocket to use, so he can set up his instrument and go turn to locate anything, stake anything out, say I want to know where hut 12 is because it's not marked anymore, it's not, doesn't have flags on it and you can't see it obviously. So he'd probably just set up on here, backside here, and he turned that angle and he could find 12 really, really easily. In meters or US survey, but whatever you wanted to work in. And so that's what we did for him. I wanted to keep this drawing a little bit more simple, just because it's just a control drawing. It just gives him his points and what he needs. It doesn't need to have everything. It has most of the stuff on there, but it doesn't really need contours. It doesn't need power poles or stuff like that to kind of junk up the drawing. So we just wanted it as clean as possible for him, so we can just bring that out in the field, key this stuff in, and just go do whatever he needs to do.
Excellent.
All right, thank you. This is part 2 of our presentation tonight. A few things to clarify. Earlier when I showed the record plat, we talked a little bit about section corners and how we were doing what the original surveyor had laid out. Well, the original surveyor had laid the northeast corner of our property 24.62 feet, I believe, please, to the corner, the southwest corner of the Isabella Watts subdivision. We found that pin. Now, that pin was like this, but it was there. It was disturbed, but it's there. So it's called for as disturbed on our record plat, and that's the corner of that subdivision. Yes, like Kentucky, but a little bit tighter than what I mentioned earlier as far as its historical references. And I asked during our break, Liz to expound a little bit more about why we're doing this. What's the purpose of why we're here today? And what Archaeological Research Institute is trying to do is to preserve this land. And the more that they know about it, the more they know about the history, the more they know about what's coming next, which is some of the layout that we've done, the more they can turn this into a park and an educational, a medium for people to come in and get excited about the imagination that it takes to look at a field and go, that's just a field. Surveyors have a great imagination. We go to a property, we go, I'm going to find those corners. Good surveyors don't stop until they've dug, if they don't find it, and they go over and over, and we're going to find those corners. And I got a feeling archaeologists are just the same way. We're going to find that information that's here. We're going to discover stuff. And you should have seen Marcus jumping for joy because they found some coal, or what was it? A little bitty, and it's because they could prove from that there had been a fire there, and they could date that. And this is the kind of excitement that's needed for this ARI to move forward. And we're just excited to be a part of that. Like I said, in all my experience, and I started at 10 years old with my dad. I'm a second generation, didn't mention that, sorry. A second generation, and I started young. And I've never been involved with a project like this, so I'm enjoying the fun. So, as we move on, some more of the reasons why we're here. We're going to have Luke Strotman come up and delve in a little bit more to the ARI perspective of this project. Luke?
Hello, I'm Luke Strotman. I'm working right now. I've been working for about 3 years at Abercrombie & Associates. And I live out in Ripley County in Osgood area. So, I'm in charge of going over some more of a sheet for Marcus and his team, kind of giving them kind of like a field sheet, if you want to go to that. It's a little bit messy, but I was giving him some dimensions on all the huts, going around all the flags that we located, and then some distances in between the huts. So if he's doing a dig, he knows how far away another hut is, so he doesn't bump into that or something for him. And and when we locate the center pole, that's what we call it, the center pole. And we kind of see that everything's kind of oriented around that pole. It's kind of like the center of the site. And there is one hut that is not on our property and is not in the leasing part of it either. It's one up here. It is 25 feet off the property. Just to give you guys a heads up on that.
And like those people.
Be an interesting one to look into. Dr. Bernard in that.
Yeah, and this other one is really close. You're about 1 feet from our property line, but still on it, so that's good. And this sheet will be easy because we have in Civil 3D. If you guys do find more, it's easy enough to plop them in there and throw some dimensions on it. You want to go to the
I may have missed it earlier in the presentation. How did you determine where the huts were?
I'll get to that.
Okay.
Yep. I'll get to that. Yep. All right. This is the diorama that ARI has in their office. And when we first came to ARI, we thought the site looked like that.
How did they come up with that? How did they come up with that?
You have to talk to Marcus.
But you're going to cover it.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And ARI had a magnetic survey done on the property. Yes. It pretty much measures the soil and the ground for different textures in it.
It's after carbon base.
Yeah, carbon base, there you go.
Yeah, so the houses were actually burnt down.
Yeah.
So
They're
they're
not
only,
finding the houses that weren't burned
yeah,
But not ground penetrating radar.
no,
down. No.
Okay.
no.
Yeah, and they did that in a 20 by 20 meter square and then stitched them all together to get to the site. Yeah. You want me to go on? And looking at the images, that's what the site looks like, and all these flags are the huts that Marcus and his team laid out for us to locate. That's how we were able to get to know where the huts are. And we're also tasked with designing a parking lot and a walking path for ARI. And the parking lot we were able to fit 9 spaces in there. The spaces are 9 by 18 feet with a 20-foot backup area so you can turn around. And that has been staked if you want to pull that up. Yeah. So that's down here, and it is on your guys' property, so you guys don't have to worry about any leasing or anything. So we did stake out this corner, this one, and this radius right here. Due to the location of it, you can't really bring in any solid material, I guess. So ARI is going to bring in some dirt to help with the grading of it, because as in the picture that you saw, that floods right there. And right now it's very muddy and it's all rutted up, so you can't really use the parking right now. Everybody's just parking on that road right now. So, and then the help with that, the ARI is going to put grass seed down to help with the erosion and help hold any dirt that they do bring in. Keep it settled there. And walking path, we designed the 5-foot grass path, and we made 2. We called them 2 loops, the inner loop and the outer loop. And the outer loop is 0.3 miles to do it, and the inner loop is 0.2 miles. Not terribly long, so most people could do it, but because this is just a design, because it's just grass, ARI can move this anywhere they want. If they're working, in hut 12, they can move this there. You just gotta keep it cut. Because both ARI and Cincinnati State are both gold for teaching people, we thought that the parking lot and the walking path would be best suited for that. And
Do you want to take any questions?
do you have any questions?
Something we missed here, we do have, this is a video.
Yes.
Let's see if we can get this to play. Probably not though, because that's how things work.
Yeah, this is the parking area right now where everybody's.
Yeah, it doesn't want to play for me. All right. Well, we'll move on to.
When was this that most recent?
I believe this is,
Flooding
yes, this is back in March. Yes.
And so the site is
This is.
where
See that tower?
the
Yeah.
tower is?
Tower's right there.
Yeah, you just see the.
It's right around the tower.
Okay.
So
So we
what was
really,
what was the river,
what was the river stage?
52?
No, it was
56,
56, I think.
56 is flood the site, 52 is around the edge. And then
This would have been on its way back down. Yes,
Yeah.
there are these coming in
These
there.
docks.
The video would have illustrated that.
Yes.
But it's not.
Are the-
not gonna.
Are the buildings subsurface?
Yes.
So, and my question is, we're seeing all this water, they were originally much lower. Did they sink? Were they subjected to flooding?
The silt's been built up over 1,000 years, so we dig down 18 inches and we're at the 40-inch floor, basically.
Only 18 inches, okay. Well, it's just a hop, skip, and a jump. So, not terrifically underwater. I was thinking maybe the roof was at the top, and
No.
so the whole thing would have been underwater, but apparently not.
All right. We'll move on to our publication.
Yes.
So the goal, my name is Emerson Howeller. I'm going on my 2nd year working at CT Consultants out in Blue Ash. I'm originally from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. I've come up to learn with you good people the profession of survey. And want to talk a little bit about the program here and Cincinnati State. The goal of that program is to give us the best tools to succeed in our chosen fields with a combination of in-class learning and experiential learning. And this project was really a culmination of all those things that we've gotten to, that we've learned throughout our careers at Cincinnati State. And the really great thing about this semester in particular is that it allowed us to work at a great project this semester with ARI. And their goal of education and preservation in their community is something that we were really excited about. And we wanted to share that with people. So the best way we thought to do that was we're going to write a couple articles. One of those articles is more lay speak, so it's a little toned down on your technical references, just saying that, hey, this bachelor's program at Cincinnati State, we're up and going, and we're out here in the communities that we recruit from, and we want to have positive impact there. And the second article, more technical, not overly so, that's not really our forte, we're not technical writers by profession. We could write several papers about how this total station works, but we're not the people to do that. So that technical article glances over the type of equipment we used and those procedures we used to produce the drawings you've seen here today. So we can see for our more technically toned down article, we thought our best publication point would be in our Cincinnati State newsletter. Also, we've kind of kicked around the idea of a local newspaper just to really pump up the community aspect of what ARI is doing and what we're hoping to do at Cincinnati State. And on either side of that, you can see our Point of Boundary and XYHT, which are your trade magazines for land surveying. And we've kind of based our technical article off of guidelines that we've received from XYHT. So going into why it's not overly technical in those articles is we have a word limit here. So we had about 1,000 words to describe what we did, what we're doing, why we're doing it. And I think we really accomplished those things along with myself taking the brunt of this technical article and Rakeem and Luke really helping us out with our newsletter. And all of this that we're doing here today, this presentation, these articles, kind of feeds into that old saying is, if you didn't tell someone you did something, did you really do it? And that leads right into our next slide of our drone flight.
Oh, shoot.
Oh, sweat.
I know. We're going to forget you, right?
I had all my spirit wear and everything.
So taking this over is going to be Mr. Jared Foster and Frank Sullivan.
I'm going to van a white for Jared here.
Yes, midway through the project, we got to have a real awesome experience, and I think it was a new experience for everyone. LBJ Incorporated visited us and gave our site a drone flight. Survey drones have the ability to generate high-resolution orthomosaics and detailed 3D models of any site. Now, they're really helpful for like a large site where if like that total station would take you like a day or two, the drone can do a flight and wipe it out in like 30 minutes to an hour, whatever it's picking up. And so we were able to see some really incredibly detailed model of our site, including like tire marks that we were able to pick up, like real distinct tire marks that showed us that like people were mudding out there, which is kind of interesting. And we also got like a different view of the tower and the site itself, like a new vantage point. It really helped us out a lot. So these are the two gentlemen in Navy at LBJ that helped us with that. So yeah, we'd like to really thank you guys for coming out and doing that.
Yeah, the drone has so much information. I mean, the package that you guys sent us We've downloaded on 3 different computers and tried to get the Pix 4D to read it so we could show it to you today. Failed 3 miserable times. So that information is excellent, and it's just very modern. So we're having to get some tweaking on our computers and stuff to be able to get that up there. So that's going to be there, and we're hoping that that Liz and Marcus and their team can have a station put up over there at the ARI there on Walnut Street, and have that drone data to where they can have somebody come in and they can play with that viewer, you know, and be able to see what they found and why the ground is such a great 4-wheeler location, right? So you'll be able to see all of that, and then they'll be able to take that information, and hopefully in the future, as it becomes less and less the latest thing and more of the average thing or the norm, they can put some of their information in there and show people how that gets put together. So we appreciate, I keep wanting to say LJB.
LJB, that's right.
LJB, for coming out and teaching us and showing us that they spent an entire day out there with us. And guys, we don't get that everywhere. So when I need a drone done for my job or for my business, I have to contract it out, and they won't even let me come to the site. They'll just send me the information. So for them to come out and to volunteer their time was awesome. So look them up if you're in need of some of their information. In closing, we hope that you've enjoyed some of this information as much as you can. We understand that some of the technological stuff can just get mind-numbing at times, but for us, it was awesome. It was a good experience. Cincinnati State Tech has now a Bachelor of Applied Science in surveying. You say, well, they must have always had that. Well, no, they've always had surveying. They've always taught surveying. But until 2019, I believe, 2020, so even just last year. See, there's something good that came out of COVID. Huh? Something good, right? No, seriously, we didn't know if anybody was going to show up tonight. We even brought these. You know, we didn't, you know, so thank you for even coming out. That's awesome. That you even got out of the house and went anywhere. I wanted to, actually, I wrote a joke to start us out. I should probably end on this. I was going to go around and make sure everybody had pants on. You know, because everybody's been doing Zoom, you know, in their underwear, right? Okay, maybe I shouldn't know that. But a Bachelor of Applied Science in Land Surveying, and that's one of the reasons that drew me to them. And but some of the professors that we have there have been there forever, and they just really know their stuff. And we've had a great time being taught by them. We want to open up time for questions and food. And turn it over to our instructor and supervisor of the surveyor in responsible charge, Carol Moore.
Do appropriate clap, right?
Dr. Mormon?
These guys did a great job. One of the things that they weren't aware of when they started this class is they're like, okay, we signed up for class, you're going to teach us, right? I didn't teach them. This was a culminating experience, so it was you show me what you know, and we're going to go from there. So I guided them, and this is what we came up with. I think they did a pretty good job. I'm a little disappointed with the drone information that we got in the end. You know, one of the things at a bachelor's degree level we should be able to do is we should be able to research and find solutions. So that is something certainly we will work on as far as teaching. You know, moving from an associate degree to a bachelor's degree program, we have to up our game. Our graduates should be better than the technician level, and that's our expectation. So these are our guinea pigs. They are our first capstone class on the bachelor's degree level. So I want to thank ARI, Liz in particular, for helping us set this up. What we wanted to do is find a nonprofit organization that we could help and that these students could get their experience. You know, they talked about, I've been working for a company 2 years, 3 years. They've been doing pieces. What they did the last 15 weeks is they took a project from proposal and meeting with the client to finished product. So, you know, as far as the product that we are supplying to them, you know, at Cincinnati State, we've got professors that are licensed in Indiana, Ohio, and Kentucky, so we will sign off on the documentation and make it official and legal and all of that kind of stuff, so that ARA's got something to work off of. But you know, I really want to thank LJB for coming out. They came out, they brought their whole survey department, and they flew the site, and then they stayed, and they went through the processing of the data and how to do the data, and they provided that data to us. So that was fantastic. And we played with it enough that the piece we're heading toward is we want something that ARI can use to educate the public. And we can do some pretty nifty stuff with that data, but we have to have PICS 4D. And we don't want them to have to pay for that. So we're trying to find a viewer. We think we found something that'll work, that they can get in and they can use that data. So, he had a question.
Wasn't Jim playing with the shareware version?
Yes. We've been playing with a lot of stuff. The problem is, when I started in industry, we didn't have robotics. The military was the only people that could teach us about GPS. Drones were not a thing. So, you know, I know the fundamentals, but the fancy new tech, I need help. So, and I'm willing to admit it. So, you know, as these guys get finished and they think about what their future career is, if they go on for a master's degree, they can start teaching for us and they can help us with that aspect of our program. But
Have
again,
you reached out to PICS 4D for like an educational version?
Yes. No.
Because if you get the full version, I think you get a free viewer that you can send it to
Right.
like what.
Right.
And we can probably post that, upload it.
Oh, and put it
Yeah.
somewhere that they can go over
Yeah.
it? Oh, okay,
Yeah, we have
okay.
that.
Okay, so we can talk about that, we can figure out. how we
Contact
can- There you go. So, yeah, and our contact with LJB was actually a co-op, so, you know, I want to thank, we've got members of our advisory board and co-op employers here tonight, so I want to thank you guys for coming out and seeing what these guys, and supporting our students as we go through the program. So, again, thank you, and if you need anything else or you've got questions, we're available for you.
Abercrombie, FS10, Lawrenceburg Public Library, Dearborn, County Courthouse, Recorder Servers, Engineer,
That was really quiet, you just thanked everybody that's on the screen behind me.
You had a question?
There's a whole slide on
Oh,
it.
there's a whole slide, okay.
Daryl.
There was.
It's not Daryl, you had a question.
Yeah, yeah.
After 4 years in the program, does anybody up there besides Carol and Frank know what a beer leg is? It's a very important surveying question.
You set out over where a stake needs to be, and you can't put it there. That's
What-
what our beer leg was.
Way back in the day, before you could measure electronically, you had to pull a tape measure. And you had to pull a tape from the point upon which you were set up on. And if you had to pull the tape through the leg upon which you set up over, then you had to get the whole instrument, pick it up, move it, and set it back down. So you had to move the leg to pull a tape measure, i.e. you owed the whole crew of beer. There you go, now your education is complete.
Watch your leg, watch where your legs are.
Thank you guys
Well,
so
thank you.
very, very much.
Thank you.